Thanks for the and introduction to the discussion topic today. It's surely unprecedented times. A cliche that's true, and not only for all of us individually, but for many businesses. And insurance sector is not left out of that. Different segments in the insurance sector have faced different scenarios. So we talk about auto insurance, things in sales of. May I request all the panelists to go mute if till the time they're not talking. Thanks. Yeah, so the new sales of vehicles came down, and that impacted the auto sales business, auto insurance premium to a large extent. But on the other hand, I think claims also came down, considering there were very few vehicles on the road. But we see that as public transport is not working today, or not being used today as much, the use of private vehicles goes up, and there's an expectation that claims will go up again. On the other hand, for health, while policy sales has surged due to obvious reasons, claims initially were low, and thankfully, because mortality in COVID has been low in India specifically. But I think what we hear now is that the non-COVID claims are back to the pre-COVID levels already. And while the whole industry, including life insurance, sales has been a challenge on account of not being able to solicit business, with the traditional models of physical sales. Even claims investigation and surveying has suffered, during the lockdown. And thankfully, a lot of companies had invested a lot in digital tools and automation from the perspective of both improving the customer experience and reducing processing costs when it comes to claims processing and investigations and settlements. Those investments actually came to the forefront and helped in the last few months. So we'll hear today from our panelists on what are some of those initiatives that have helped and are planned in the future as well. And the second most important topic, obviously, is fraudulent claims. And some of the estimates tell us that the total amount stolen in fraudulent claims every year is close to $80 billion, which is almost 10% of the total claims processed in the PNC sector alone. Now, insurance continue to make significant investment in technology. Not only artificial intelligence and neural networks, as she's talking about. I think now latest is to use social media information as well to manage fraudulent claims as well. So I think with that kind of background, I'll probably move on to starting the discussion with Mr. Sanjeev Dwivedi. And my question to you, sir, is that we request you to share how Bajaj Allianz has used cutting-edge technology and innovation in the process of claims servicing, assessment and settlement during the COVID period, and some of these innovation ideas that will help in future as well. Over to you, sir.
Yes, so thank you, Rajiv, for giving these questions to me. In fact, when it comes to COVID, yes, it has been a problematic situation for many. But as when it comes to Bajaj Allianz General, we were already tech ready at our virtual space, and this situation has helped us to come up with self-survey kind of activity where a link was being sent to the customers at the even at the claim stage. So whenever a claim customer is entering in the system, a link has been given to them. They can, on their own, they can click the photograph of the vehicle, do the video of the vehicle and send it. And our underwriting team could, sitting in the office, can assess and underwrite the risk. Even at the time of claims, the similar kind of link has been sent to the customer. And based on that, we have also, based on our past history, almost 50,000 different kinds of damages are being captured, and it is continuously improving. This data is improving with the help of machine learning, where the system itself is giving a indication of the estimated cost which will be borne by the customer to repair the vehicle. And once this estimate is sent to the customer accepts it, and within a fraction of minutes the payment is transferred to his bank account. So this is helping us to, in fact, this is giving a lot of pleasing experience to our customers also. And you can also see this is helping in our NPS scoring, which is increasing. Now, when it comes to investigation, we have obviously there has been a lot of challenges where fraudsters are not ready to meet us. The vicinity check has become a problem because of social distancing. Interviews has also been a problem. Our field investigators were not ready to go on field. So what we came up with is with a virtual platform called WorkApp, and this WorkApp is basically helping us to do the interview of the customer directly, and also with this interview which is recorded, we are now adding up with voice intelligence on that, and image intelligence, voice and image intelligence, which is helping us to generate a score on the customer, which will tell whether he is a genuine customer or not, or whether whatever answer he is giving based on his emotion, based on his body language and his body movement, we are getting a score, and this is helping us to further take it ahead for our investigation purpose. The third part when it comes to investigation which we started is we started more of predictive trigger. So we initially almost a year, almost 2.5 years back, we started with rule engine based activity where triggers were made, and we were making our system to learn over period, which has helped now to come up with the predictive analysis on whether this customer who has entered our system, whether he will default in future or not. So that kind of trigger analysis system has started. We have come up with a digital legal search activity where any customer who is entering in our system, if he or she has any criminal background which is relevant to insurance, there we are trying to weed out those customers from our system. We are not allowing those customers to enter at the initial phase itself. Because insurance overall, as I told you, is people have a thought in their mind that insurance, and especially general insurance, that it's a waste of money. If there is no loss which happens, they feel that it is waste of money. So in this scenario, obviously the frauds have increased. I will come to this answer when you come up with the fraud question on fraud, Rajiv. I think based on our current technology and tools, we are helping our company to build up. We have helped our company to build up a new risk assessment model where a red carpet is being spread and given to the customers who have good history and who have got good records. Which is helping our customers also to get policies at a lower rate. Plus, the geo trigger based behavior is also helping us to identify and come up with appropriate strategy on which market to move, which take ahead with, and whom we should weed out. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thanks for sharing these, and indeed, not just servicing the customer improves. We can see that also the business ratios can improve, and we can also use this data and information that we gather during the journey to prepare for better products and better services for the customers. With this, I want to actually ask Uday to come in here and share, from Innate's perspective, how Innate can help address some of these challenges for the industry towards digitization and tech enablement, and share some case studies as well. Over to you.
Rajiv, thanks for that. In fact, I'd like to start off by sharing a case study because I think that is what is a translation of reality. So we have a really good experience with life insurance with the Generali Group, which is now Utmost. And that is, and what kind of the case study around is where Innate became the interface between the insurance business and its brokers. And managed everything from your, from your.
I request Sanjeev to go on mute. Actually, that's probably causing some disturbance.
Yeah.
Go ahead with it.
No worries. So basically, this was in the sort of high-value life processes where we manage the interface between the brokers from the point of communications to managing the journey entirely through to resolution. And this would mean new business, partial surrenders, full surrenders, managing all the documentation which you require for a transaction, be it partial, be it missing documents, things like that. And then basically some of these at a sort of very high level where the insurer needed to just get control and governance and understand what's going on quickly to be able to improve broker relationships and customer relationships. And since they knew that they already had a bad customer experience and a bad track record with brokers, they really wanted to kind of fix that and sort of be able to control it, measure it, improve it, and get all the metrics out. The sort of deployment was about across 200 of their agents. From the point of signature to go live was about 6 weeks. And some of these were sort of light touch processes. Some of these were, deep orchestrated processes from an end-to-end perspective. But I think what is the interesting bit here is the sort of outcomes of all of this. And there are sort of 3 or 4 things which I'll touch upon. The first one is actually the sort of turnaround time as experienced by the brokers. That actually went down 80%. This was a case study signed off by their CEO, Carl Nodal. And what happened is when brokers were previously experiencing, for example, 10 days to get a turnaround on something, they would now get it in 2 days. And what happened as a direct consequence of that, 20% of the agents of the operational environments volumes came, the sort of work effort came down because a lot of the chasers, a lot of the interactions of where things are, all of that simply went away because your overall turnaround time became so much faster. The second direct impact was on the cost, a 15% saving on the cost because the concept of overtime, temporary staff, all of that sort of went away because they could just manage much more. But the most sort of significant improvement was in broker engagement and employee engagement, because broadly employees were sort of no longer fighting to do things quickly and produce responses quickly, because a lot of it was already being automated. And what generally as a business allowed their agents to do is they didn't kind of get rid of anyone. They kind of just allowed them to spend more time with brokers, talking to them and kind of helping them solve problems and stuff like that. And a very interesting sort of effect of this was they became one of the more easier European insurance businesses to deal with. And the subsequent year, the following year after doing all this digitization, their business went up by 40%. Now all of this, of course, is not going to be only tech, but their ability to handle that increase without actually any further cost incurring, and keeping their sort of customer experience constantly going upwards. That was like a quite a phenomenal outcome. So to conclude, customer experience impact massive, cost impact significant, top line impact due to cross-selling, better customer relationships and engagement, significant uptick. And while we are on this topic, I'll just touch upon automation as well. Before they kind of deployed Innate, they actually went in and deployed some bots. And what happened with that is their ROI was pretty poor on that, primarily because they were kind of automating point solutions in different processes. They were not getting very good returns, and they knew they had a systemic problem of running better, leaner processes. So once they deployed end-to-end sort of workflow governance control environment where they ran everything, they could actually then bring in bots into that and even do things like bank reconciliation and all in real time as part of the entire end-to-end process flow. So they just got much better returns. They're much faster turnarounds and things like that. I think, Rajiv, at a high level, I think that's all I'd like to add. I mean, there is nothing like a real world example to drive all these points home, and hopefully kind of come back to the whole customer experience is ultimately king to drive revenue.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I think we've all heard about the words like robotics and analytics, and so it's good to hear a live case study and how it impacts all stakeholders throughout the value chain. I think that's the great example of that. So thanks, Uday. And with that, I want to move on to Sundar for a perspective on how technology and analytics can actually help improve claims experience in a life insurance company.
Yeah, I think claims experience for a life insurance company has become important. People are all catching up and trying to beat that up. 99% settlement ratio is what everybody is aiming at. We are at 98, but 4 or 5 years back, it was at subpar 85, 86, or 87. And we've climbed up to 98. At the same time, arrested so many fraudulent claims. So I was acting claims head, or the claims head used to report to me about 4 or 5 years back. And I saw patterns every day. For a life insurance company, settlement of a claim is of immense importance because that's the moment of truth for the customer. And you don't settle claim, you repudiate, you need to go through a very good process or a robust process. And the process was that rejections used to come to me and I had to approve that. Whereas if they want to pay up, they can pay up, they don't need to come to me. So I used to see patterns every day, day in, day out, IH, and some regions are bad, 200 odd regions, 220 odd regions in the country, because we were having vast number of branches, 1,200, 1,400 branches at that time, now about 700. So regions, and then occupation. Occupation would be self-occupied business actually. And also house-wide buying term insurance, Y value. So I could see patterns. Every day I used to get the same kind of claims. Insured 85 age but shown as 65. Then terminally ill patient, cancer, but insured by ambulance chasers. So we used to call them ambulance chasers because they would go and insure people in hospitals. And so there was a fraud racket in 200 odd locations, 220 odd locations. And the claims used to really mount up. At the same time, I had the pressure of settling claims, coming up with a good settlement ratio. So you have a trade-off, you have a juggle, and you say, okay, let go smaller claims. But it used to be bad for the book. You have a by E, which is actual by expected, which is very high, higher than 100, 120, 140, you're actually burning 160 in some cases. And of course, we put up workflow to speed up TATs, ensure customer experience is good, because you can't harm the good ones, the good apples. 80, 85 are good. Just because you have fraudsters, you can't harm the experience for the bad, good customer. And so you have to do a constant chase with balance things on TAT, balance things on coming up the curve qualitatively. So what we launched, when I saw these patterns, I actually said, let's go after the fraudsters. And we launched a new process drive. It was in fact much before even Section 45 was amended in 2014, 15. And so what we did was we went after the fraudsters. I started something new called post-issuance risk verification. After you issue a policy, you start investigation because the fraudsters have entered you. And I am very sure that they've entered your company. And so I saw the patterns. So I used the regression analysis, looking at the patterns, and said, okay, let's go after these pockets, the bad regions, the bad occupation, the combos of term life and occupation. And the pattern worked. So I spent about 50, 60 lakhs extra, whereas I used to get 40, 50 crore of saving annually. And so first year, this was again manual. Second year, manual. Just by identifying patterns, I had some 9-10 combos based on my own experience and intuition. Then I said, let's automate this because the company had analytics. We were using SAS for persistency. We were using SAS for sales analytics, segmentations, etc. So I said, let's use backtest, whatever we're doing, using claims analytics. Patterns clearly. And we did 6 months of backtesting, and that helped me to predict fraudulent claims. So what we did was, of course, this PIRV is a bad experience in the sense that you do challenge a policy after issuing, you might upset a good customer. There could be 1 or 2 false positives. So we used to be careful. We used to give it back to the sales and say, you go and check with the customer and come back. 99 out of 100. 1 person would come back. I said, okay, great. But what we did was using analytics, using workflow, and some of what Sanjeev shared, we migrated the PIRV, the post-issuance risk verification, to pre now, about 4 years back, underwriting stages. So, and they used to give it to investigation. Of course, I had challenges when I changed. I did post issuance. I actually approached the regulator first, checked with them. They said yes, of course. Actually, Section 45 kicked in. Section 45 says that you can't challenge the policy after 3 years. So that sort of helped me, and therefore we had to go after fraudsters before. And today we are doing extremely well, and claims experience also. My buy is 65, 70. Our early claims has come down, and we're in the top quadrant. So it's a journey. Last 7-8 years been a continuous journey on quality, on mortality, on fraud prevention. At the same time, giving better experience for the client. So slowly, we're climbing up 95, 96, 97. Today we're at 98.2. We're hoping up the claim settlement ratio, at the same time ensure fraudsters don't using analytics, using systems, using workflow, using better experience for the client. We also use some kind of area analysis, using intelligence, and also try and help the investigators by giving analytics cut with them to them. We had COVID times problems, as pointed out. The sales was down in April, May, but then the digital transformation we had ushered in 4 or 5 years back, sort of, and digitization helped us actually. And by September, we are up neck to neck with the last year, and we're doing well now. It's back to normal, actually, living in COVID times, thanks to digitization, thanks to use. So this is what I thought I'll come up with.
Great, thanks, Sundar. I think very beautifully explained how you've actually used your understanding of risk from applying that to issuance to pre-issuance, and that gives us a good segue into our next topic, and which is related to frauds and claims. And I'd like to start with Rajneesh to share his views on exactly this topic of striking the balance between claim settlement ratios and customer experience, and apply it to fraud.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajiv. Am I audible? Yeah. So, see, for us, claims is more
yes,
of a
Rajneesh, and I request others
yes.
who are not speaking to you.
So, for us, claim is one of our,
Right.
something very close to our core philosophy of existence. See, company claim is a big event. It's not like some without any offense to anyone. It's a matter of life and death. If I limit myself purely to the mortality claims, it's a matter of life and death. So it has to be a very compassionate process, and that's why the people who are managing claims, people who are handling claims, and people who are handling claimants are trained to be a more and more caring and more understanding. We don't fill their mind with any sense of inbuilt doubt, prejudices, suspicion that play a very, very different role when it comes to execution of this philosophy. See, at the end of the day, life insurance is unlike general insurance or motor insurance. You are not looking at a combined ratio of 30%, 40%, more than 100%. Your products have been priced in the manner that you expect to claim on an average. It can vary from one age to another age. On an average, you expect 2 claims per 1,000 to happen. This is how most of the time your baseline pricing works. So this is the number you are looking at. So if you are insuring 1,000 people, you are expecting 2 people to die. So when those 2 people come to you, your reaction has to be very, very different. And this is where the entire philosophy comes in. What you do through a regulation, you are expected to investigate or suspect claims which has happened within 3 years of existence. Beyond 3 years, anyway, regulator has put all the bars, so you cannot do anything. So out of 2 per 1,000, you have a bar of 3 years. So that way, claim has to be very compassionate process, very sensitive process. And this is where it is important. Why I took some time to explain this part was that if you are facing a challenge, if you are seeing some pattern, Sundar explained very beautifully. If you are seeing any pattern, if you are seeing any suspected element creeping in, claims is not the place where you have to do your interventions. Because then you will be faced with false positives, you will face with a situation where somebody has suffered some bereavement, and there you are sitting with your procedures. And especially in this is the core challenge we face in the COVID era, where a claim has been logged in. You are expecting this person to bring a certificate from a hospital. You are expecting this person to bring a death certificate from a municipal authority, which is not working. And then you say, no, these are our baseline requirement. I cannot deviate from here. My SOPs don't permit me. And this is where we think that technology has to play a much better role to bring about an understanding of the whole value chain of life insurance. And eventually the customer, the image that we are able to pass on to our customer. That is where the essence of our business model lies. Because eventually life insurance, when you are selling it, is a promise, nothing else beyond that. And when the moment truth has come, and then you have to live up to your promise, you just cannot sit back and say, no, now I have a procedure. That is where, when we look at claim process, we are looking at the entire value chain, right from the time this all story starts. When I say right from the time story starts, I'm not limiting from the time the onboarding process starts, because the linkages of ours with others becomes equally important. And I tell you, one of the challenges that we faced in the COVID era was, okay, you are a big company, you are a company with a sizable balance sheet. You can invest in your own technology, and you have a philosophy of investing, so you are ready. But you have a lot of partners working for you. Are they ready? And what you can do to make them ready. So, for example, Sandeep made a very beautiful mention in the beginning that investigation is a core challenge, because for investigation, you are dependent on your partners. How quickly can you make them enable to use technology? Because there is no other method. This time, the COVID time has taught us very clearly that when you are faced with this kind of a situation, nothing else but technology will work. And this is where our own reliance on RPA, our own work on a workflow, all these things started coming into play. Make the technology reach out as far as possible. So we invest significantly in the capabilities of our partners also in this journey. And this is something which was a real learning for us, that no, we cannot exist. We heard people saying silos with the life insurance company. In organization, how quickly you are able to reach out to those people. Now, analytics and other things we have been doing for quite some time. We are working on very cutting edge technology. We are using the latest one, neural networking and the mapping, and then the map based linkage and nodes and so on and so forth, everything. Now, it is not important that only you understand these things. When you are working in an ecosystem, your ecosystem partner also have to understand and also have to align to these things. Now, this is something that now we have started working upon, that how to make our ecosystem partner align to these things, align to new technology, align to new ways of working, align to something which can produce much superior result, and then can impact the activity across the value chain. And this is where our onboarding becomes more important. We want to be less and less intrusive. We want to be respecting people's limit, people's privacy, giving them a sense of certainty, both at the time of onboarding and at the time of claim. Some death has happened, and the old parents or a widow or little children have come to claim that amount. That time, the attitude is to help them out. The last point I will make is that is why I gave this background. At the time of claims in life insurance, what happens? That you are not dealing with your policyholders. Your policyholder is no more. A new person has come into in the scene, and you are trying to adapt this new stakeholder in your process. And then to make him understand that these are the better methods of doing it, these are the solutions. So more claim stage, it is a question of how effectively you are able to reach out to your new stakeholders. And this is where the role of technology, the way you deploy RPA for your call center, the way you integrate this technology in your back office processes, those things become very, very critical. And these are the things we were able to do much more effectively in COVID time. And these were the learnings for us, that how more effectively can I reach out? It's not a time when you have to write an email. It's not a time that you have to send a letter, physical letter to the customer. Post offices were not working. So it's not about being legally defensive. So this is a time, even the call centers were not working. So you have to find a method to reach out to your customer and make them understand that these are the minimum things he or she has to do in order to get the claim, and help him out on those things. For us, this is the essence of the entire thing. The risk management gets ingrained in that. And this is all I wanted to tell you, that risk management has a share of this thing. Risk management should only allow you to weed out the undesirable elements, so you are able to service your customer in much better.
About when the customers come in.
Thank you.
Be ready through. And at this point, I want to pass on to Satya to share his views on how to identify fraud triggers and how to practically manage fraud. And, if you can include some elements of technology in it, that would be great. Over to you, sir.
Rajiv, am I audible, Rajiv? Am I audible? Yeah. So, Rajiv, in the context of what I think the way Rajneesh ended, the way Rajneesh ended in terms of leveraging the technology and how risk management has to be ingrained to weed out the undesirable element. I think they're very, very rightly articulated in terms of the business sense of we are in the moment of the customer, we are there, and we are not here to really spend more time and energies and efforts to really find what is efficient or what is not efficient. So technology element, which is I have seen across the industry, the leveraging technology to really create risk incident triggers of what you consider something as a falsified claim or a falsified policy at the point of source. Because I think the way Sundar mentioned, the post-issuance verification as a control was quite important, because at any point of time, you are allowing a fraudulent element to enter the system through a policy issuance. And then in the moment of truth of he making a false claim is at the point of when he makes the claim. So if you have controls at the points of the claims itself, really helps the organization.
I think there's a problem with audio and Biju.
We can hear you, Rajneesh.
Is it
able to
It's
hear
coming.
Yeah.
you speak.
Is it clear? Yeah.
Yes, Satya, you clear?
Yeah.
Rajneesh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I think that typically, when you have these risk indicators, there are a lot of risk indicators you create. Typically, a lot of applications in multiple insurance companies, you have these key risk indicators, coded, or I would say the rules are part of the claim system itself. And you have rule triggers. So their trigger could be for a materiality of fraud. Typically, the rule triggers, which are for every type of indicator. And what happens when you have such risk indicators, which are for every type of fraud indicator, the exercising the trigger is not a proof of fraudulent claim. It's only an indicator of a possible fraud. Early warning indicators becomes an over-engagement, an over-engineering aspect, and redirecting the organization resources towards investigations. And you need to have a risk indicator so that our investigations and our efforts to really go in and harass the customer is not there. So trigger, from a sense perspective, there could be a triggers from the materiality of fraud perspective. The triggers could be of the claim rejection. The trigger could lead to investigation. It could lead to detailed peer check from a doctor. It could lead to a claim investigation for the line of treatment. It could be a fraudulent investigation also complete. So when you talk of system controls and when you talk of that frauds which are happening, you must have already seen, the type of cyber frauds which people are doing. So they are doing, seeing the information of the customer, operating to a illegitimate website, and then they are also trying to steal information and then, cheat the customer. So there are a lot of now multiple ways, either from web services perspective, from an app perspective, there is a lot of fraud that is happening with the customer. And within the insurance company, if you have those controls which are building, when you say a lot of demarc solutions are created so that people do not misuse your domain name and people are not phished with incorrect image. There are also solutions in the market where the incorrect URLs and the deepfake apps which are resembling your organizations are also identified and their takedown services are operated. So these types of technology interventions are also helping insurance companies to protect themselves and also to identify a fraudulent customer. So the era has come. I think we having a business sense, the amount of business sense we bring into this effort of reducing the fraud, and there is a lot of technology leverage we need to do. We need to strengthen our we need to strengthen our risk indicators. The materiality of fraud has to be strengthened. That what you want to consider as a fraud and what you want to investigate, because unnecessary resources which are going in for every small trigger is something which as an organization we should get away with, and that is a maturity I think from a fraud perspective every organization need to take it. So again, from a governance perspective, I think we have the anti-fraud policies, we have the risk management committees, the fraud management committees, but they have a limited role because at ground level controls which needs to be operated needs to be strengthened. So I think there is a journey with our entire insurance industry needs to take from strengthening the control technology perspective when the fraud is considered. We have all the technology initiatives, insurtech startups on the business side of it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity of insurtech startups in the fraud control from a technology enablement perspective. So I think this is what my thoughts. I think that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Satya. And, talking about the industry and industry initiatives, I think Insurance Information Bureau has been collecting a lot of data. Request others to want to for a second. Has been collecting a lot of data, and there are certain ways in which it is helping as well the insurers in terms of fraud detection. Either not very proactively but reactively. So it'll be, a lot of panel members today have been part of these committees which have worked with the Insurance Bureau. So it'd be good to hear your views on how this is helping and how further this can help. I request Sanjeev to start with, and then maybe Sundar and Raj can add to this.
Okay, so Rajiv, I missed the call little bit. Was it related to IIB which you are asking for?
Yes, that's related to IIB. That my question was.
Okay. So if you recall, like CIBIL scoring, which is used in the banking sector today, has been of great impact for selecting the right customer set and also to reduce the NPA management in the financial sector. In fact, bad customers who were planning to, or who had an idea of exploiting the entire financial industry were weeded out, and the similar thing is also happening for the GI or the insurance space, where I feel that IIB would play a greater role to prevent the frauds. So as I have told in the initial stage, that when it comes to general insurance and specifically in motor, whenever a customer pays a premium, he feels that if he has not got any losses during the year, if there is no claim which has happened, he may feel that it is a pure waste of money. So in those scenarios, when he feels that it is a waste of money, he may do all sort of hanky-panky to recover that premium amount. They may use various techniques also. So now here, how IIB would play an important role. I would just give a simple use case over here, where some vehicle which was stolen from Bajaj, which were insured with Bajaj, got stolen. And after 2.5 years, the same vehicle was insured by another insurance company. There, IIB has given us a trigger that this is the same vehicle which has been stolen from your company 2.5 years back and now is being insured by another company. It has helped us to do the recovery of that vehicle. So that was one of the classic use case which now IIB is in fact doing, and it is helping us out right now. But when it comes to the overall role of IIB, which we expect from them, yes, it is a long way to go. They have a major role where they can, in fact, come up with customer level risk quotient which can be made. Differential premium can be made for people who are repeated claim generating customers. The data from IIB itself can help us to weed out those customers who are affecting our bottom line. So these kind of efforts we can expect from IIB. In fact, just to highlight you and bring to your notice that IIB has started working on this, they have prepared a few forums, and people are working towards developing the definition of fraud and how it would be identified, which all will be considered as fraud in terms of insurance, so that there should not be any ambiguity on understanding issue by the insurance companies. And I feel within few years IIB will be supporting us to the extent which we are looking from them. Over to you, Rajiv.
We are running a little late, and I know we have to also get on to Sunesh. Sundar and Rajneesh, if there's any pressing comment you want to add on to this,
So I've been associated with IIB since last 7 years. So I agree with Sanjeev that it can contribute a lot and it needs to up its ante. There are, of course, it's moving slowly, and LIC hasn't joined yet, although they are part of the committees and the advisory board. There are challenges on the data front and confidence certificate, but I can tell you 30,000 crores is the annual fraud bill of the insurance industry. You can straight away save 3,000 crores or more than that using IIB data, because 10% is the sharing fraudster workshop for these two companies. That's the analysis. And so you straight away save 10%, 30,000 crores, 3,000 crores. So all that we need to get our act together and join together, contribute data and collaborate better so that we achieve dividends in terms of fraud prevention.
Sure. Thanks, Sundar. Namrata, we have one panelist left you need to take views from, then we have discussion. I'll move on to Sunesh, and Sunesh, if you may throw some light on how technology can bring in transparency in the process, and how through the stakeholders, how we can use technology.
Sure. So, so especially, in fact, earlier in the day, I was listening to the panelists, and there are a couple of things which stood out primarily. And what stood out for me was the fact that a lot of people said about, in fact, Mr. Rajneesh Madhukar also mentioned how we can ensure that partners are empowered. And when I say partners are empowered, and in fact, earlier in the day, I also heard somebody talking about how agents are being onboarded digitally. And there was this comment made by someone saying that, I forget the name of the person, but she said that, 50% of their agent onboarding happened offline, happened online last year, and this year onwards is nearly 99%. So, which is a huge jump. I mean, obviously, it is accelerated by COVID.
May I request other panelists to go on mute, please? Yeah, other panelists, please go on mute. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, go ahead, Sunesh.
Yeah. So that was an interesting statistic which stood behind me, that ensuring that agents are onboarded digitally. So that's like empowering partners. Second is also the fact that a lot of in terms of information is being shared with the customer online, offline. I mean, it's typically through digital channels, and that's so a lot of onboarding, which is both customer and agent side, is being done digitally. And also, there's a lot of focus on ensuring that work processes are being streamlined. So now, and there's a lot of, when you backtrack these things, you have to ensure that processes are streamlined. And that's where technologies like service orchestration can help. So, when you have to implement a process digitally, which is completely offline, there are multiple things which are involved. You might look at involving technologies like RPA. You might looking at using NLP bots and stuff like that. And that's where I think the whole challenge lies. How do I ensure they're interconnected properly? And I think that's where solutions like where Innate fits in, where robotic service orchestration definitely helps. So I mean, broadly, these are our views. I'm afraid, since I don't come from an insurance background, I could primarily talk about the technology aspect.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Namrata, do we have time for questions, or we wrap up?
We can take a few questions, like maybe one or two.
Okay. So over to the participants then.
Participants have been active on asking questions through the and few of them have already been reverted back. So
That's right.
it's already getting late. Yes.
I noticed. So I think then we can wrap up. And I think I don't want to add too much from my side. Just saying that, times of today, it's even more important that insurance harness automation and digital technology to the extent possible to the customer experience. The importance of that is most important, and also make sure that the claim processing process is efficient and costs are lower, and across the value chain, everyone benefits from it. And as we do that, I think we can see that benefits of technology is that we'll be able to manage frauds as well better. So over to you, Namrata. Thanks to all the panelists for giving in
Thank you.
large
Thank
contribution.
you so much, sir.